Welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. I'm THL staff writer Brandon P. Joining me today from the Dean E. Smith Center is our very own publisher, Mr. Andrew Jones. And Andrew, we just watched North Carolina get an 86-70 win in its opening game over Radford. We saw some good things. We saw some bad things. Carolina left tonight with a double-digit win. It didn't look like it didn't look like that would be the case for most of the game, but this team played with a lot of effort. They just showed a lot of things that showed that this team could be different from last year's team. So I'm just wondering, from your vantage point, Andrew, what did you see that makes this team different from last year's team?
Well, it's just very looking out on the court. There were a couple of sequences early on with the five guys on the floor with Jalen Washington and new guys. So it's going to take some time for someone like me who covers them to just kind of get used to the different player groupings and some of the basketball mannerisms of some of these guys. And I think that's what makes it fun. And I think a lot of people that were here tonight enjoyed that. The fans didn't get restless with Radford leading with, 2.5 minutes left in the first half. They were ahead and they cut it to 2 in the second half early on. Fans didn't get restless. I think they understand this is going to take time. And they also understand that there are a lot of nice parts. So we got a chance to see some of the good, and on November 6, 2023, some of the bad, some of the stuff that needs work. For example, I thought the defense in the first half left a lot to be desired at times, but we learned in post game, and this is the value. This is why you got to be there to properly cover team. Kids tell you stuff, and they said, look, they were working on some new stuff defensively that they hadn't done before, and it was taking some time. They were having a little bit of issues with it about trying to force them to take 2-pointers, force them to take 2-pointers inside the 3-point line. And they had some issues defensively with that, and they ended up allowing a lot of stuff in the paint and, quite frankly, too much stuff at the rim. But they talked about that more than anything else at halftime. They got it fixed for the most part, and that's what enabled them to pull away. It wasn't the offense, it was the defense, which is why they were able to pull away and win by 16 points, which for an opener on November 6th, I think that's fine because they showed enough stuff. They got a chance to get a 40-minute game in together, which is the beginning stage of many as they eventually figure out what they're going to be together. So I thought that was great. They're a different team defensively. You saw Armando guarding guards out there. They're going to switch 1 through 5. They switched a lot. They were getting beat on some of those switches at times in the first half tonight. And the Carolina players gave Radford's guards a lot of credit, and they were pretty good. And Hubert did as well after the game. And you got to credit them for making the plays. They hit some tough shots. There were times Radford got some buckets that, hey, you do everything you can defensively, and a guy makes tough shot. It's basketball. It happens. Yeah. So, but I also think that we got to see a faster Carolina team, a Carolina team that I thought ran much crisper sets. In fact, there were times the sets were so crisp, Brandon. If you weren't specifically looking for it, you may not have known they were running a set. And I think that one of the things that this team can do that last year's team had nightmare problems with, and I talked to a bunch of the guys about it last year. They kept, RJ in particular kept saying, look, when our sets break down, we're a mess. Tonight, they showed that they can, when something breaks down, they can play off each other. They can play off each other because they have dudes that can space the floor because they can make shots and they're comfortable playing away. They've got dudes who can put the ball on the floor and do something with it, including finding teammates. And they've got guys that are very aware. I thought the recognition on the floor for one another tonight was outstanding. You saw it early on when Paxson Wojcik gets the lob into Armando, I think on their first or second possession. And the next one, he gets a catch and shoot 3. Yeah. And you get catch and shoot 3s because someone finds you. You get shoot 3s off the dribble because you create the 3 yourself off the dribble. They got a ton of catch and shoot 3s tonight. Didn't always hit them, but they got them. I thought that was a great sign. That's something that I've talked a lot about over the last 5 weeks that to expect from this team. Because I asked Harrison and I asked Cormac about 5 weeks ago, I said, what are Carolina fans going to see different from you guys here than what they saw at Notre Dame? And they both immediately said catch and shoot 3s. Most of the 3s they took in their previous schools at Stanford and Notre Dame were off the dribble. And it's a different shot when it's catch and shoot. It's a rhythm shot. And you saw the difference tonight. They hit their first 5, and they were all catch and shoot. Now, they struggled some. I thought some were rushed. But that three that Cormac had over here in the corner, which was sort of a dagger three, that was a skip pass from one corner to the other from Harrison to Cormac, and he drained it. And then you could see Cormac's emotion. And that's the other thing. This is an energy club. Some of us were talking on press row. It's like whenever Hubert went to the bench, there was never a drop off in energy. It was the same energy. Jalen Withers is an energy guy, and he's a big dude. He's a guy that if you get pulled into an alley, you want him with you. You want Harrison Ingram with you. You want Armando Bacot with you. You want Paxton Wojcik and Cormac Ryan with you because they're tough guys. That wasn't entirely the case about last year's team. Yeah. So we saw all that early. And to me, it's a little bit like the Campbell football game. I watched that game to see how Carolina executed, not to see so much what the result was, right? Tonight was a little bit like that. I wanted to get a feel for how this team could play off one another. And I thought there were a lot of positives when we saw the glimpses on both ends of the floor, because they did get better defensively. We also saw a lot of different guys go after the shot. I don't know how many different guys have blocked shots tonight, but the help side quickness is there, and it was missing a year ago. So I think that this is very positive in a lot of ways. Now, they have to get a ton better. No doubt about it. But there were a lot of positive things, and we saw a lot of glimpses on both ends of the floor, especially on the offensive end, especially with respect to pace, especially with respect to depth. That is going to makes this a very intriguing team. In fact, I asked Armando afterward, I said, man, you got a lot of branches on the tree, man. I said, that has got to be awfully intriguing for you, because he's never had a lot of branches on the tree except that year with all the big men, and they were all like big branches at the bottom, and there's nothing at the top, and the tree goes up. So he said, yeah, he's very intrigued, very excited to see how this thing, what shape this eventually takes.
Yeah, and speaking of Armando Bacot, I believe he recorded his 69th double-double of his career when he had 25 points and 13 rebounds. But AJ, he wasn't the only person that flashed. Not to go back to last year again, but I feel like last year it was either Armando Bacot has a really good game, or if Armando Bacot has a bad game, everybody else will have a bad game. Yeah, it's gonna be a hard game. But today, Carolina showed some flashes of other people being able to help. What did you see from that standpoint?
All 11 scholarship guys showed flashes.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure how deep Hubert would go. And we still don't know, because again, it's November 6th and it's Radford. Yeah. And we could talk about how deep he's going to be comfortable with, in mid-February. We'll track it every game, obviously. Fans are going to talk about it like crazy. But I did think it was interesting that Zayden High, along with Elliot Cadeau, were the first two guys off the bench tonight. And High made his presence felt right away at a block shot, and he was crashing, committed a foul in transition. But I love the energy. I love the go after it. He didn't step on the court and look around and say, okay, man, do I belong here or not? And all 11 guys stepped on the court tonight like, yeah, I'm Tar Heels, and I am worthy of playing inside this building with all this laundry up here, which I can't understate, or excuse me, I can't overstate how important that is and how difficult that is for a lot of guys. I think there was a parade of dudes that had been in the program the previous couple of years that had trouble with that. I didn't see anybody on the roster tonight that's going to have any issues with that. None of them. So we saw flashes from everybody. We saw flashes from Jalen Withers. We saw flashes from Jalen Washington. Seth Trimble on the defensive end. He gets on the floor and immediately forces a turnover. He gets a block shot. He draws a charge, all in a 5-minute segment. And he shows you all that energy and that bounce. He looks bigger and stronger this year. It looks like he'll handle a guard, take him into the lane better than he did a year ago, which he had some trouble with. If you remember the Virginia game up in Charlottesville, Reese Beekman got him in the lane a lot that night and had a lot of success. I think guys will be less likely to do that with him this year. I mentioned Zayden High. I can go through every one of them. Wojcik had really good moments. Ryan, you know what Ryan is. He's a moxie dude. He gives him a little bit of that Brady edge. That's always going to be there. I thought RJ played within himself tonight, didn't try to score a ton of points because, hey, I'm a senior and I'm the guy here. Wasn't like that at all. And Elliot Cadeau, he started out a little slow with some turnovers. He had 2 quick turnovers, probably should have had a third, didn't get charged with that. But he told me afterward that he wasn't amped up. There were no nerves. He's never come off the bench in his life before in an actual game. So I asked him, I said, So, like a lot of guys that come off the bench, it's an art in a lot of ways. You have to get yourself ready. You're watching the game a certain way. So when you step on the floor, minus the sweat, it's like you've already been out there. And so I asked him, I said, how'd you go about doing that? And he said he was just watching the way they were defending. So when he got out there, he wouldn't be surprised by it. It was a pretty mature response for a dude that just turned 18 2 months ago, or if even that. So yeah, 2 months ago, I guess. So I think that Carolina fans should be really optimistic. This team's going to lose games, but they've got a lot of neat parts. And I think that we saw tonight, Hubert can bring in waves. He can go big without Armando on the court. Couldn't do that last year. Pete was more a 5 than a 4, but struggled at times. Mm-hmm. And I think Armando looked pretty good tonight. He still gets challenged sometimes on shots around the rim, but he was quick. He was decisive. He's strong. I thought he looked better on the defensive end than he did a year ago with a lot of stuff. He's active. He doesn't have to think about doing entirely too much because there's other guys out there on the floor I think he trusts. So this is a more economical team. Yeah. And it's an economical team. It's also one that you're going to have different guys rise up in different games. You know, Withers may go 3 games and he scores 10 points. Then he may go 2 games where he goes 15 each night. It's going to be situational. It's going to be circumstantial. And it's also going to be, hey, he's just in the flow, just happens to get more looks that night. And that's the other thing I liked about this. I like the unselfishness of this group. I like that there's such a willingness that they will play together. And I think part of it is because those flashes that we all saw tonight, they've been seeing it for months. So they know that everybody that gets on the floor is good. Yeah. Whereas in the past few years, there were times when certain guys would get on the floor, and I'm not saying they would be intentionally ignored, but they didn't make themselves available, so they were ignored. Every guy out there that stepped on the floor tonight has the ability to make themselves available. And I thought that's a good sign.
Yeah. AJ, in the first thing that we talked about, we said that there was some good, some bad. Obviously, there was some bad. Carolina was only up by 1 point at halftime. But you said the fans in the building, they weren't getting restless. Can you just talk about why we shouldn't take too much into that, into the bad that Carolina played today?
It's November 6th.
Yeah.
It's November 6th. There's a lot of new parts. There's 4 scholarship guys back from last year. 5 transfers came in. I guess, to be honest with you, Okonkwo, I don't think he did.
Towards the end of the game.
10. Yeah, toward the end, but 10 of the 11, I should actually say, not all 11. And Okonkwo's got 3 years if he wants 3 years. So I think he's insurance, and he'll help them at some point. But it's going to take time with all these new parts. I asked Armando, I said, how long do you think it's going to take? He said, well, we got to get the most out of the next 2 games with Lehigh and Cal Riverside before they go to the Bahamas. And they'll really get tested in the Bahamas, obviously. They could lose a game or 2 there. And I don't think it's going to throw them off course. Last year's team lost some games and it threw them off course and they never got back on. Yeah. I don't think that's going to happen with this group because they're smart enough to recognize, Jacob and I use the word all the time, but this is a process, but it's a really intriguing process. I don't think it's going to be kneading dough. I think this is a situation you just got to play games, get guys on the floor. I think they had 16 player groupings on the floor today. So they're going to have to go through that. You just can't snap their finger and be in February form. But to get to February form, they have to have a game like tonight. You know, they were challenged some and they responded and pulled away and won by 16. No one's going to remember that in 3 months if they're battling for the top spot in the ACC. If anything, you look back and say they needed that. That was good for them. They had to extend and play 40 minutes tonight. So that's good. That's better for a group like this with so much newness than to come out here and have a 30-point lead at halftime and get into coast mode because they're not going to get that much value out of those minutes. I think they maximized on the 40 minutes tonight, got a lot out of it, the good things and the bad things. So it's going to take some time. And quite frankly, if Lehigh pushes them some and if Cal Riverside pushes them some, that's not a bad thing. Maybe one of those games they blow up, maybe Riverside, since that's the 3rd game. But if they are pushed and they're forced to play 40 minutes, it's going to speed up that process of coming together and figuring out exactly who they are as a unit. They all know who they are individually. What are they going to be as a unit? So a close game like that doesn't matter much.
And I also think with a team like this with such older players, I think they understand the importance of the process. And I think when you're going through the process and you're coaching a team that understands the importance of the process, I think it makes the process a lot easier to.
They want to
to
win. They want to
They
win.
want to win. That's all that matters.
I asked Pax Sublogic, I should have worded the question different. I said, people are going to look at the score and they're going to think, oh, I said, and my whole point was, but it's okay to have these games because you guys just need to get out and play and figure things out and, hang up the laundry and let it dry and let the wrinkles let go wrinkle free after a while. I don't know what the hell that is, but you know what I'm talking about. And he's like, well, we don't really care what people think about the margin. We just know we got to get on the court and play. So in a roundabout way, I got what I was looking for.
Yeah, same thing.
I could have asked the question better. Armando said the same thing, and so did Cormac. Cormac's like, man, we want to win. It's a good win. That's a good team. It's a good win. We didn't get to talk to Jalen Withers. He said the same thing. He won 4 games last year at Louisville. So there's a lot of hunger to win. And that's why I think is so good about tonight, because there was a Dean Smith-ish thing about all the guys getting in there and trying to be a part of 5. Yeah. And we didn't always see that last year, the year before. A lot of Roy's teams are like that. And I saw that tonight. Now, whether that continues, we have no idea. I don't see any reason why it won't. Yeah. So this was a good opener for a lot of reasons. And it's just the first little step of many.
Yeah, I agree. We'll see if this rotation continues as the competition gets a little stiffer. But AJ, I think that's a good place to stop. We're getting pretty late in the night. Again, Carolina 86-70 win over Radford in its opening basketball game. For TarHeelIllustrated.com, I've been Brandon P. He's been Andrew Jones. Thank you for watching.
Thanks.